Hey everybody. Yeah, you can see what's in front of you. That is the Sonic and Comic Encyclopedia. And you know what's funny is a lot of people in the past 24 to 48 hours have been pretty much saying one thing. And not just in the past 24 to 48 hours either. Also the past week or so with the previews and stuff. But pretty much everybody's been saying the same thing. Now, well, not everybody, but there have been fans, if you will, that have been coming out and saying the same thing, and that is, and I quote, might as well throw out your Sonic Comic Encyclopedia. Yeah, they've been saying that. Or some have been saying, why did they even make this encyclopedia in the first place? You see, a lot of fans are pretty much, they pretty much look at this Sonic Comic Encyclopedia and think now, basically thinking, why do we even have this now if most of what's happened is being thrown out? Well, let me explain one thing. The old continuity is not being thrown out. It's just being mixed in with a new universe. In other words, things are being altered, if you will, to fit into a new universe. In other words, the same historical events or past events have occurred. It's just things are being altered, or if you will, to fit with this universe. That's basically it. They're basically being fit. They're basically being altered to fit this universe. In other words, all the flashes of memory and all that, all the past memory and stuff, it's still all there. All the past timelines that everybody's going to remember, if not, like that, or just slowly but surely, it's starting to mix in. It's starting to come back and mix together as part of the new timeline. I mean, an example is Sonic now starting to remember events of the new timeline. In other words, events he already knew about, but have been altered to fit the new timeline. I know it sounds confusing, but it's not the first time something like this has happened in any kind of media. Let's not forget that. In other words, the characters are still the characters. It's just that certain things have changed around to fit the new timeline. And one of those things probably is Sally being normal now. In other words, she might remember that she was mechanized. She might. Or what could happen is that, as some people would say, the past 20 issues, that probably after she did the sacrifice, if you will, to save the world, she, instead of being roboticized, she probably ended up with a new look. So we don't really know. We don't really know, but my assumption is Sally is going to be one of the main characters, believe it or not, that's going to remember everything. She's going to know, because let's not forget, she was in proximity of when she sacrificed herself. She was in proximity of the first Genesis wave. She was in proximity of the second one in her mechanized form. So she's going to remember. You don't just have a character put in those situations and not have them remember, and then still have them on the death egg for no reason. But, speaking of the story arc of the past 2.5 years, Worlds Collide included, if you will, or Worlds Collide put aside, even though it does play an integral part at the beginning and at the end, or at least at the end, with little flashbacks here and there. Here's the thing. A lot of fans have asked the question, and the title is right down below. Fans ask, the title is going to be below, or it's going to be in the description box. Basically, fans are asking, What was the point of the past 2 years of story? What was the point of the past 2 years of story? In other words, they want to know what was the point of roboticizing and mechanizing Sally. What was the point of doing this whole World War II? What was the point of the Death Egg being Death Egg Mark II if all of a sudden 22 issues later, you're just going to throw that all out. What was the point? That's what fans want to know. What was the point? Well, the way I look at it, and with all due respect to Ian, because I respect the fact, despite some of the differences I have with him, I respect the fact, and I've said this before, that he has accomplished, he's gone and accomplished his goal of writing for the book, of living out his dream and writing for a Sonic comic book. A comic book and franchise that, just like all of us, he's been a fan of since he was a kid. Now, I give him all that respect for accomplishing those goals, making some great stories. Let's not deny that. He's done some good stories. But with all due respect, I think Ian Flynn, and it's not just, we can put Archie into this category. We can blame them. We can blame Sega. We can blame the lawsuit and all that, as well. But I think also Ian Flynn kind of wrote himself into a corner. Here's why. Because even if you have the lawsuit or not, or even if you have Sega's interference or not, or Archie's interference, I think Ian Flynn, his intentions were good, but I think his idea was too ambitious. He was too, in other words, it's like this. It's like this. You say to yourself that, sometime down the line, you want to do great things. Like, let's say, for example, you have a dream of, let's say you want to be the guy that runs the Disney Corporation, or at least be put in charge of Disneyland. It's a great goal. It's a great goal to want to achieve, be the person in charge of the greatest theme park in the world. But it's a bit ambitious, isn't it? Because it's going to take a while for that to happen. Not saying it can't happen, but the goal for that to happen, when you want it to, is a bit ambitious. That's basically what it is. It's like when somebody says, hey, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. It's like, okay, the first part is a bit reality. It's a bit like, okay, that's acceptable, that's, achievable, but the other one that you want to do afterwards, I think you're getting a little ambitious. You're getting a little ahead of yourself, if you will. And again, with all due respect, I think that's what Ian Flynn did. I think he got a little ambitious with the story arc, thinking it was going to be the story arc that was going to basically leave him with a legacy or leave his mark on the comic, so that when he does eventually probably step down or move on to other things in the future, and believe me, he will, at least he could say, hey, I made one of the longest story arcs in history. Yeah, it didn't have a proper conclusion, but I hadn't gone and made the longest story arc in the Sonic history. At least he'd be able to say that. But you see, again, with all due respect, I think, despite the fact that he could go out and say he did that, I think Ian Flynn has come to realize he wrote himself into a corner. Because let's be honest, I don't think Ian Flynn expected the lawsuit to, interfere, this lawsuit between Penders and Archie to interfere. And I'm sure as heck, with all my heart and soul, I'm sure as heck feel that he was not prepared for maybe Sega's direct involvement more so than it's ever been. I mean, honestly, I think when I look at it, I think that's basically what it is. I don't think he was prepared for the lawsuit to kind of interfere with any of his plans. I don't think he was prepared for Sega or Capcom to come forward and say, hey, we want this crossover done at this time, and when he was originally going to use that time frame to finish up this story arc. So with all due respect, I don't think he was prepared for that. And again, I'm not trying to defend him. But let's be honest, folks. If you suddenly had something planned out, and you were thinking, this is how it's going to go, I got everything set up, I got everything planned out, we are ready, set to go, and all of a sudden you get word that you can't do that there are certain things that there are certain parts of your plan that can't be done, you have to end up changing your plans, right? I'll give you an example. A couple weeks ago, let me see. Over a week ago. Yeah, a week ago this past Sunday, my second oldest sister and her husband were planning to fly out of Vegas and come back here, and fly out from Vegas to Stockton and come back here and come here to Patterson to pick up the kids to go back to Modesto, because the young one, the 6-year-old, had school. Well, that plan sounds all good, right? Well, thanks to Mother Nature, if you will, those plans got changed. Those plans got altered to the point that they had to basically wait another night. True, the airline compensated for them, and the airline compensated for them having to wait by putting them in a hotel and stuff like that. But still, their plans to come home on Sunday night, get the kids, go home so the young one can go to school on Monday, those plans had to change. Just like my plans changed. See, my plan on that Monday, which was going to be the 19th, my plan was, okay, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to get up, I'm going to wake up my 9-year-old nephew, get him ready for school. His grandpa on his dad's side is going to come pick him up, take him to school. And I was going to plan on resting and relaxing most of that day, probably doing a few videos, maybe watching a movie or so, and just relaxing, right? That did not happen. I had to change my plans. And that is why when you look at a vlog here on my channel, it says slight change of plans. That's what happened. It was a slight change of plans. There was nothing I could really do. There's nothing I could really do. Things changed. It's kind of like when my oldest sister who's 4 years older than me, when she took my niece to Vegas for her 21st birthday, as she was planning things out, one of the Saturday night they were going to be there, they basically planned to do certain things. They basically planned to go to American Storm or somewhere else, right? One of these male strip clubs. Unfortunately, they couldn't do the American Storm deal. They couldn't do another one that they were hoping. So they did basically they went the traditional route and they did Chippendales. So basically the original plan was to do, I guess, what was known as the American Storm, but because they couldn't do that, they had to switch over and do Chippendales. Kind of changed the plans a little bit. You see, that's exactly what happened with Ian. With all due respect. Ian basically had to change his plans because of everything that went down. because of the lawsuit interfering, which I'm sure he didn't expect to happen, because of the fact that Capcom and Sega wanted the crossover to happen at the same time he wanted to end the Mecha Sally Death Egg Mark II World Tour 2 arc. So basically Ian had to change his plans, had to basically change his plans to better suit the situation, whether he liked it or not. I mean, do you think honestly he wanted to do this? Probably not. But again, he had wrote himself into a corner because he wasn't expecting. He didn't plan. I mean, he did plan ahead with the story, but he didn't plan ahead of what would happen behind the scenes. He didn't expect stuff to come up like it did. So basically, by not planning both ways, like, okay, I'm planning the story ahead. I have an idea of what's going to happen. I have an idea who's going to happen to. I have an idea what's going to take place. Blah blah blah, and what the story is going to be about. Even though he properly planned out all that, because the thing was, he didn't plan ahead of what could happen behind the scenes. He didn't plan out what changes could happen behind the scenes. So he basically had to alter them almost on the fly, and thus write himself into a corner. Which is why a lot of people look at this and they say, well, ask the question of what was the point of the past 2 years if you're not going to give this supposedly mega arc that you were working on, your story arc that's going to define your legacy. Why even do it? Why even blow up Antoine, put him in a coma? Why even have Bunny Rabbit go MIA or walk off to her Uncle Beauregard to try to get her robotic limbs back and stuff, and then or why even have Nicole banished from the kingdom or something like that, or more so, like, why even have Sally roboticized, mechanized, and weaponized? What was the point? You see, that's how a lot of fans look at it. They're like, what was the point? Some will say there was no point. There was no point at all for this to happen. Now I understand. Now I know some people might say, well, the reason it happened, the reason Ian Flynn made it like this, the reason he couldn't give it a proper ending is because pretty much he did exactly what we all thought he did to Sally. Yeah. Imagine this. Laser X5, Jonathan 83X, among others, who have constantly, for the past year, if not 2 years, have constantly come out and said that he had gutted Sally when he had Eggman weaponize her, that he basically gutted her. Basically took all his stuff out, right? Well, here's the thing. Even if that was the case, and like I mentioned earlier, with her possibly being one of the main characters that will remember everything, I'm sure those fans are going to use that as an excuse, saying, okay, well, the only reason she restored this way is because he pretty much blanked it up, because he did exactly what we said he did. He pretty much had Eggman gut her. It's like, you cannot restore somebody that's basically had everything taken out of them after they've been roboticized and all of a sudden have everything taken out of them so they can be weaponized. You just can't do that. Well, stranger things have happened. Stranger things have happened. And like I said, unless what happens in 252, as well as in 253, unless that all now takes place after Sally's sacrifice to the point that she's not roboticized but she's got this new look, if you will, then so be it. But again, despite that, I still believe she's going to end up remembering everything just like Sonic did. So she's going to be like, yeah, I remember what happened. I remember being roboticized. I remember being weaponized. I remember I ended up fighting you guys against my will. You know, I'm sure she's going to remember. Because like I said, she was like Sonic. She was close to the Genesis wave, not once, not twice, but on 3 different occasions. Well, actually on 2 different occasions, but she also had the Chaos Emerald deal. Or whatever you want to call it. The point is, folks, a lot of fans are going to be asking a question. What was the point? What was the point of the past 2.5 years of story? What point was there? Was there any reason for it? And some fans are going to come out and say there was no reason. Some fans are going to come out and say, look, you know, you can't judge something just yet. You know, some are going to come out and say, Ian Flynn said the old continuities are going to be there. It's just going to be mixed in with this new universe. In other words, a lot of what's being remembered is being altered to fit the new universe. You know what I'm saying? So, again though, fans are asking the question, despite supporting it or not, they're asking the question of what was the point? What was the point of the story arc? What was the reason? What was the point of turning, roboticizing and weaponizing Sally? What was the point of Bunny going, MIA? What was the point of Antoine going into a coma? What was the point of this? What was the point of that? They're going to want to know what was the point. You know? They're going to want to know that. And they're going to say, well, you can't just have, you know, and there's going to be fans that are going to be like, look, we understand the lawsuit screwed things up too, but, you know, that's still not an excuse to have what happened happen. So, again though, they are asking the question, what was the point? And I think that is a question that, with all due respect to Ian Flynn, with all due respect to Paul Kaminsky, I think they need to answer directly to the fans. They need to come out and explain what the point was. That's what they need to do. But that's all I'm going to say on this video. Let me know what you guys think. Do you have any idea what the point was? Or do you still have that are you still asking that question? Let me know what you guys think down below. Video response if you like. And I will talk to y'all later. I'll probably do this in a text form and a little later on, or a little bit. Peace out. God bless.